One night while having dinner, my husband looked at me and said, "From now on, you have to pay half of everything." I can't keep feeding a freeloader. Asterisk hello, everyone. Before we start today's story, I have a small request. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video on our channel. Your support means a lot to us. Where are you watching from? Leave your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story for a few seconds. I didn't even process what I'd just heard. I thought maybe he was joking. Tom loved his dark humor, but his eyes stayed cold and sharp, like he'd been waiting to say it for weeks. The steak on my plate had gone cold. The candlelight flickered between us, and all I could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. How do you respond when the person who gave up everything for calls you a burden? 7 years. That's how long I built my life around him. I left my job in marketing because he wanted a traditional home. He said he'd take care of me, that I didn't need to worry about money, that our relationship was a team. But somewhere along the way, that promise twisted into a quiet kind of control. Tom liked order, his kind of order. Dinner ready by 7, shirts ironed by color, bills paid on time, conversations scheduled like meetings. He thrived on perfection. And for years, I thought keeping up with that made me a good wife. Now, he was sitting across from me, wine glass in hand, talking about splitting bills as if we were roommates. "I just think it's fair," he added casually, cutting his steak. "I work hard, Evelyn. You stay home, cook a bit, clean a bit. But I can't keep shouldering everything. It's not sustainable." My throat burned. I wanted to tell him I'd carried more than he could ever imagine, the mental load, the emotional labor, the invisible weight of every forgotten birthday and every quiet apology. But I said nothing. Instead, I forced a smile. "All right," I said softly. "Half of everything." I used to think our marriage was built on love. Looking back, I realized it was built on my silence. When I met Tom 8 years ago, he was everything I thought I wanted. Confident, successful, the kind of man who looked like he had life all figured out. I was 25, working as a marketing associate at a startup, and he swept in like a storm. Dinners at rooftop restaurants, weekend getaways, and long talks about our future. He said, "You don't have to work so hard, Evelyn. I'll take care of you. Focus on building a home. That's what truly matters." And I believed him. I left my job a year after our wedding, telling myself it was temporary, just until we had kids. But the years passed. There were no children, just expectations, his and his mother's. Evelyn Bennett, the housewife, the woman who made everything look perfect but was invisible inside her own home. Tom's mother, Patricia, adored her son and treated me like a project, someone who needed to learn how to be a real wife. She'd say things like, "Tom works so hard, dear. You should make sure his evenings are peaceful." And I did. Every night I prepared dinner, light candles, wait for him to come home. Sometimes he'd smile. Other times he'd barely look at me. I stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror. My world had shrunk to the size of our kitchen, the grocery lists, and the laundry basket. That first week after his announcement, half of everything, I moved like a ghost around the house. Tom acted as though nothing had changed. He still left his dishes in the sink, his socks on the floor, his expectations hanging in the air like invisible rules. But something had shifted in me. I started keeping track of everything. The hours I spent cooking, cleaning, managing the house. The groceries I bought, the electricity bills, the meals I cooked. I wrote it all down, line by line, in a small black notebook. If we were splitting everything, I wanted to know what everything really meant. At night, when Tom fell asleep on the couch, I sat by the window with my laptop open, scrolling through old job listings. My LinkedIn profile was outdated, frozen in time, like me. Sometimes I wondered what my old colleagues were doing. Did they remember me? Did they know how much I'd changed, or maybe how much I'd disappeared? The silence of the house became unbearable. Even the ticking clock felt like judgment. But then, one night, as I watched Tom close his office door behind him without a word, I felt something strange, not anger, not pain. Determination. For the first time in years, I whispered to myself, "I want my life back." I didn't know how yet, but I knew the moment had come. It started with the laundry. One morning, I folded my own clothes neatly and left Tom's piled in a basket at the foot of the bed. When he came home that evening and saw them, he frowned. "Why didn't you do mine?" he asked. I looked up from my book. "Because he said we're splitting everything. So I figured I'd do my half." He blinked as if he hadn't thought his words would echo back at him like that. "That's not what I meant." "Oh?" I tilted my head. "Then what did you mean?" He didn't answer. That week I stopped cooking for him too. I made small, simple meals for myself and left the fridge organized, half for me, half for him. When he opened it one night and found nothing but his raw groceries untouched, he called out, irritated, "Evelyn, why is there nothing to eat?" I walked in, calm and polite. "There's food, Tom, you just have to cook it, you know?" "Your half." He stared at me like I'd grown another head. For years, I'd done everything automatically, set the table, planned the meals, kept the house spotless. I never realized how much of myself I poured into making his life comfortable. And now that I'd stopped, the silence in our home grew thicker every day. He started coming home later, eating takeout, muttering things under his breath about how immature I was being. I didn't argue. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I kept my notebook. I logged every expense, groceries, utilities, even the detergent I used for my laundry. When the electricity bill arrived, I highlighted the total and left it on the counter with a sticky note, "Your half, $78.40. Tom scoffed when he saw it. "This is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous," I replied, "is pretending that partnership only exists when it benefits one person." He didn't like that answer. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker behind his eyes. Meanwhile, something inside me began to bloom again, a small, fragile spark of independence. I started waking up early to go for walks. I'd forgotten how it felt to breathe in cold morning air, to move my body just for me. I joined a community group that met at the library every Thursday. People sharing career resources and local job openings. They didn't know my story, they just treated me like I mattered. One afternoon, I updated my resume. It was clumsy, outdated, and full of holes. 7 years worth of gaps labeled homemaker. But I didn't feel ashamed anymore. Those years had taught me endurance, organization, diplomacy. Skills I hadn't realized I had. I sent out 3 applications that week. Tom didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't care. He was too busy complaining to his mother about how I'd changed. But I had the version of me who used to wait up for him, who used to flinch at his sighs. She was gone, and for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. By March, things had settled into a strange rhythm. Tom and I barely spoke. We moved around each other like polite strangers, 2 people sharing walls but not a life. I had found a part-time marketing gig with a local boutique. Remote work that paid modestly but gave me something money couldn't buy, pride. One night, I sat in the living room sending an invoice to my client when Tom's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Normally, I wouldn't have cared. But the preview lit up. "Thank you again for the transfer. Couldn't have paid rent without you." My stomach sank. The name on the screen, Melissa, his ex. The one he told me was just a part of the past. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. 100 thoughts collided in my mind. Disbelief, anger, humiliation. I didn't open the phone. I didn't need to. I simply took a photo of the screen with my own. That night, I lay awake beside him, the glow of his breathing infuriatingly calm. Every bill he demanded I split, every insult about freeloading, it all suddenly made sense. He hadn't wanted equality. He'd wanted freedom to give his money elsewhere. 2 days later, I checked our shared account. The transfers were right there, small amounts at first, then hundreds. Always to Melissa. My hands trembled as I printed the statements and slid them into a folder labeled proof. That evening, I sat at the dining table waiting for him to come home. When he walked in, his tie loosened and his usual scowl ready, I didn't shout. I just pushed the folder toward him. "What's this?" He muttered, "Your half, apparently," I said softly. "The one you've been sending to Melissa." He froze. "You went through my no. Your phone did that for me." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he tried to laugh it off. She was having a rough time. I was helping her out. "With our money?" I asked. "Or just mine?" His jaw tightened. "Don't twist it." "You're being dramatic." I leaned forward. "You called me a freeloader, Tom. You humiliated me at that table." And all this time, I was the one paying for your generosity to another woman. He slammed his hand against the table. You're paranoid. The sound echoed through the house, but I didn't flinch. I met his eyes, steady and cold. If you raise your voice again, I'll let your mother know how you've been spending your half. And that stopped him, because nothing terrified Tom more than disappointing his mother. I didn't have to tell her, not yet. She called a few days later, complaining about how distant I'd been. I told her, gently, that I was just following her son's rule, splitting everything evenly. There was silence on the other end. I see. She said at last stop by April, Tom had started avoiding me entirely. The air between us was sharp, brittle. I kept my job, my savings, my distance. And though I didn't say it out loud, I knew something had shifted forever. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was preparing. May began with a letter, thick, official, and humiliating. Petition for divorce, Thomas Carter versus Evelyn Carter. He was suing me in his claim. He accused me of emotional neglect, financial manipulation, and failure to fulfill marital duties. The words blurred as I read them. My hand shook, not from fear, but from the absurdity of it after everything. He was painting himself as the victim. When I showed the papers to my lawyer, Miss Green, she exhaled slowly and said, "He's trying to intimidate you. But you've got the stronger case if we play it right." So we did for weeks. I organized every scrap of evidence I had, spreadsheets of our split bills, screenshots of his messages to Melissa, copies of his transfers, notes of every argument since March. I stayed up late, labeling each file like I was building a fortress. When the hearing day came, I dressed simply, navy blazer, hair tied back. No tears, no fear. Just calm precision. Tom arrived in an expensive suit, flanked by his lawyer and his mother. He didn't look at me, but I caught the faint twitch in his jaw. He hadn't expected me to show up looking composed. The judge began. Tom's lawyer spoke first, painting him as a hard-working man who had been taken advantage of by a wife unwilling to contribute equally. I let them finish. Then, when it was my turn, Miss Green handed the judge a folder marked exhibit. A dot inside were screenshots of Tom's messages. "Melissa, I'm short on rent again." "Tom, don't worry, I'll send more." "Evelyn's finally paying her share now." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Tom's mother's face turned white. "Exhibit B," Miss Green continued, placing printed bank statements on the table. Multiple transfers to Miss Melissa Harris, taken directly from joint funds. Tom's lawyer sputtered, "Those were charitable donations." "Charity," Miss Green said evenly. "That includes heart emojis?" The room tensed. Then I stood up. "Your Honor," I said softly, "when my husband decided marriage was a financial arrangement, I followed his logic. I split every bill, every meal, every chore. But I didn't realize I was also funding his affair." Tom jumped up. "She's lying." The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Carter, sit down." The silence that followed was thick and heavy, the kind that only truth can create. When the session ended, the judge ruled in my favor. The house remained mine, alimony denied to Tom, and my financial independence recognized as the gavel fell. Tom stood frozen, face pale, hands clenched. His mother turned to me quietly and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." I nodded. Neither did I. Outside the courthouse, I felt the air hit my lungs like sunlight after a storm. My lawyer smiled. "You did it." But it didn't feel like victory, It felt like release. After years of shrinking myself to fit his world, I had finally stepped out of it and into my own. June arrived quietly. No more court dates, no more lawyers, no more waiting for the next blow. Just silence, the kind of silence that used to scare me. Now felt sacred. I started my mornings with coffee on the porch, the sunlight touching the rim of my mug. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to check Tom's calendar, his meals, his moods. I only had to care about mine. The first thing I did was reopen my old LinkedIn account. My fingers trembled a little as I wrote the words, marketing strategist. Available for freelance work. It didn't take long. Within weeks, a small eco-brand hired me to manage their digital campaigns. They didn't know my story. They only saw my skill, my passion, my drive. The first paycheck I received felt like air filling my lungs after years underwater. I Bought myself a little potted plant and placed it on the desk. For new beginnings, I whispered, but the past, as it often does, tried to crawl back. One evening, my phone buzzed. Tom. I hesitated, then picked up. His voice was tired, softer than I remembered. Evelyn? I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I lost everything. I miss you. I closed my eyes. For a moment, old habits stirred, the part of me that once wanted to fix, to forgive. But then I looked around, my cozy apartment, the quiet, the peace. You didn't lose everything. Tom, I said gently. You just lost control. That's different. He was silent for a long moment before whispering, Can we start over? No, I said, not cruelly, just honestly. I've already started over. Without you. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. Deeply. The next morning, I met Vanessa, the friend who'd been there through it all, for brunch. She grinned when she saw me. You look happy, she said, surprised. I am, I answered, and realized it was true. That weekend, I volunteered to help design a community garden project, something I'd always wanted to do. Surrounded by people laughing, planting, building something new from dirt and sunlight, I felt alive again. At one point, a little girl offered me a sunflower seedling. You have to water it every day, she said seriously. I smiled. I will. That night, I placed the seedling by my window, next to my plant from the office. 2 small pieces of life, growing quietly, just like me. Before bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Not the tired housewife I used to be. Not the victim of betrayal. Just Emmy. And for the first time in 7 years, that was enough. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city wake up below. The sun stretched across the skyline like a promise, soft, golden, full of quiet power. My life looked nothing like it did a year ago. And that's exactly what made it beautiful. Every morning I brewed my own coffee, fed the cat I adopted, a tiny feisty tabby named Luna, and sat by the window answering client emails. My work was thriving. Word had spread about my creativity and reliability. But more than that, I was thriving. People often say healing feels like fireworks, loud, dramatic, full of sparks. But mine felt like breathing again after forgetting how. There were still days when I thought about Tom, not with anger, but with a strange sort of gratitude. Because if he hadn't broken me, I would never have rebuilt myself. One Sunday afternoon, I walked past our old house. It was for sale now, a signboard out front, the lawn overgrown. I paused for a second, then smiled. That house had once been a cage. Now it was just wood and bricked out. My phone buzzed with a new message. Vanessa again, brunch this weekend? You're bringing dessert this time. I laughed out loud. Deal? I texted back. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every choice, every mistake, every moment of peace, all of it belonged to me now. That night, I sat by the balcony with a glass of wine, Luna curled on my lap. The sunflower I'd planted months ago had grown tall. Leaning toward the moonlight, I thought about everything I'd learned about love, power, and the lies we tell ourselves to keep the peace. For years, I believed that being loved meant being needed. That sacrifice made me worthy. That quietness kept the peace. But the truth is, real love never asks you to disappear to make someone else comfortable. I whispered it aloud, like a vow to myself. I don't need to be saved. I just need to be seen. Somewhere deep inside, I felt the final knot untie, that old ache of not being enough. It dissolved into something warm, almost luminous, before heading to bed. I opened my journal, the one I'd started right after the divorce, and wrote a single line. Freedom isn't walking away from someone. It's walking back to yourself. I closed the book, turned off the light, and for the first time in years, I slept without dreams, not because I had none left, but because I was finally living them.